done. Intro. It's intro time. Shush. Everyone shut up. Let's continue. We got one more story to jump into, and this one is one I'm actually kind of excited to cover. So, reporting on it from Ian Miles Chong on X. RIP Dungeons & Dragons, Jason Tondreau, the project lead of D&D and senior designer at Hasbro's Wizards of the Coast, explains that the intended audience is woke, and Wizards of the Coast doesn't give a damn about what Elon Musk or any other grognard thinks.
Wait. The intended audience is okay.
Yes, and we do have.
So they want the modern day audience, which doesn't exist. All right.
Yes, well, and we have the actual image here, so we will pull that up and read directly from him. But just to summarize, one quote: "I just don't take those critiques seriously, even now. I consider those people not worth listening to, so I didn't anticipate their outrage." He's referring, of course, to Elon Musk's negative reaction to Wizards of the Coast dismissal of D&D creator Gary Gygax, whose creations, according to Tondreau, would never pass DEI and inclusivity review today because it was made by old white dudes, and that's totally problematic. Okay, so this all kind of comes from so I'll actually read his message because this goes back and forth, I think, on Instagram here. So Jason Tondreau is the guy who Ian is referring to. So Aaron David Lewis, early in the book's development, the marketing team asked me what sort of critiques we should expect and prepare for. And I and the editors agreed the problem was going to be from progressives and people from underrepresented groups who justly took offense at the language of the ODD. I didn't write the preface until late, and I wrote it to address these concerns. It never occurred to me I'd rose the ire of Gorgonauds. It's obviously now that I look back on it, and I just don't take those critiques seriously. Even now, I consider those people not worth listening to, so I didn't anticipate their outrage. So yeah, his letter was to address the progressives and the underrepresented groups. That was
he lives in a bubble.
Yeah. Well, that's what he's saying here, is that that was what his letter was for. So the book was already written, and then he had to put the message at the front. Then he had to basically put a note at the front of this. So this is the story or what's being talked about is the making of original Dungeons and Dragons, where it talks about Gary Gygax and the other co-creators of the Dungeons and Dragons universe and lore. There's obviously so much to go into with that, where when you're talking about just straight white dudes or old white dudes being the issue.
Old white dudes, yeah.
Well, keep in mind
straight old white dude.
Yeah, straight bald old white dudes that are fat and chubby. No, I'm just not making fun of Gary Gygax, but keep in mind that like when Dungeons and Dragons was first coming into the world, it wasn't really popular. It wasn't mainstream for a long time.
Dude, I'd say almost Stranger Things brought it into the mainstream.
Yeah,
I was about to say the same thing.
Well, so Stranger Things brought it into the mainstream, and keep in mind, so there are so many different versions of the game now too. So we're currently in a reiteration of 5e. So I think we're in either. I don't believe it's technically 6th edition, but I believe it's like a revision of 5e. So is the version of Dungeons and Dragons we're playing right now. Well, obviously, that's many decades of revisions and reiterizations. All of this kind of points back to, do you guys, either of you, recall the story that broke a while back when they were talking about rewriting orcs and the race of orcs in the Dungeons and Dragons monster manual? Do either of you guys know?
I was just about to bring this up, dude. Didn't they make the orcs black?
So here's how it went down. So people who could not distinguish between black people and orcs said that the language describing orcs in the book was problematic because it was so obviously referencing black people in their eyes. And the language specifically they were talking about was the words like savage and it was words like savage, and it's an older story now. It broke a while back, so I'm failing to remember exactly which words they were having a problem with. But the frustration built up, and eventually they did rewrite orcs in the monster manual base edition. So if you have a monster manual before that revision, hold on to it. It's a collector's item now.
Yeah,
'Cause-
it's kind of the same people that were like the goblins in Harry Potter are Jews. It's just like you guys are like conflating your own like prejudices and whatnot onto like fictional characters towards like as watching
Reaching.
Harry Potter, did you ever think like when you saw the goblin, we were like, Jew.
Dolby the house Jew. Dolby.
People trying to just make problems, man.
Well, it's
Just searching for anything to just bitch about.
well, and first off, you're
Everything is
absolutely right.
racist.
Well, but it's not that everything is racist. They like I'm making a declarative statement here. The people who complained about the description of orcs because they believed that that was a description of black people are overt and absolute racists. You are an absolute
You're kind of showing
racist.
your own hand there.
Yeah, you're projecting. You believe that black people are like orcs. And so you needed to make sure that the language of orcs was soft enough that you wouldn't ever be called out on it. But you absolutely believed that. You couldn't look at it and not think that. So I'm calling you an absolute racist.
Wasn't that kind of a thing in fucking David Ayer, I think that's his name, that movie with Will Smith? What the fuck was it? With the orcs in LA.
Oh yeah. It was a Netflix original. It was a Netflix original where it was
like Fable or something like that.
yeah. I will not be able to find it. And
Light.
wasn't it just called Brick? I thought it was just called something like it just
Bright.
was a Bright.
Is it right?
Maybe. But
Brit. Oh, I'll look it up.
thank you. But yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I can picture it in my head. Yes, you're absolutely 100% on Bright. Okay, yep. Yeah, you're 100% on. So you were saying though, I mean now that we know what it is, what were you getting to with that?
Well, it's just the same shit. It's like you're conflating like real world shit into like you're interpreting it into a fantasy to where it's like, well, this group in fantasy is ostracized or oppressed, quote, unquote,
Underrepresented.
underrepresented, and then you're just like putting real world shit into it, and so it makes it political and kind of showing what you think of certain groups of people once you do that.
Exactly. I mean, they're just so blatant. It's so blatant and it's so frustrating because it used to be the case that they were like, oh, the right is dog whistling about their racism. I'm just like, you just called every black person in the world a fucking orc. Like, what are you talking about? Like, you just called them orcs. Like, you
What's up, my orc?
what my orcs doing? You see that? You see that
Jesus.
fat troll ass over there?
Orcs in Paris, motherfuckers.
Orcs in Paris. That's awesome. That's so funny. So
This is gonna go down well.
so we don't have I don't have handy the original post I wanted to pull up when Elon Musk was responding to all of this, but Elon Musk went pretty fiery at this Jason guy and hit him pretty hard. It was something like people who shit
Is
on
he bored after the election?
Are you kidding me? I doubt it. I mean, first off, he drives.
Let's get in every culture war I could possibly get into.
Well, keep in mind, dude, it's like, first off, X's success and failures depend on him. And if like he's at the center of all of these like huge interactions on X, it kind of makes sense that because he's the guy he's the guy most interested in making it successful. So it makes sense that he's everywhere.
You know about Blue Sky?
Yes. Yep. I know it exists. I have not been on it. I don't plan to be.
They're reporting a explosion of pedophiles on their platform.
I love it. I love it. That just means they're not on X. That just means they're not.
The left is like, we're gonna leave X and go to Blue Sky. It's like, oh, there's a lot of pedophilia on the site now.
I was just watching the South Park episode last night of the NAMBLA, National Man Boy Love Association episode. I was like, I would jump over to Blue Sky just to keep posting NAMBLA photos and stuff. It'd be hilarious. So obviously Elon went really hard at this, and it was actually one of the most fiery posts I'd seen him do. It was something like, It was something like people who are taking shots at the original creators of Gary Gygax and the other one. I apologize, I'm not trying to forget his name off the top of my head, but should burn in hell. Like, so he went at them pretty hard. I was like, damn, yeah, you're right. But the biggest news revolving everything today is that Elon Musk is actually shouting out in response to all of that. How much is HASBRO? Ian fires back saying it's like 8 to 12 billion in total market cap, but it's not even going to be worth that. If Elon Musk bought HASBRO, that would move the culture war needle huge. That would probably be, to date, the single biggest punch in the face to culture war, or to the culture war issues. I think that would be huge. What is your take?
We were talking a little bit about it earlier, but just everything underneath the Hasbro umbrella is just crazy.
Yeah, it's
if he were to make that purchase.
Well, and some people were responding after this because I don't know that I've seen a lot of news on. So first off, Elon. So I want to like try to get a timeline here. So a few weeks ago, we talked about Elon Musk responding to an audience member taking questions, and the audience member asked him about making video games and whether or not he'd be interested in that. He says, make video games great again. And then he goes off, and all of a sudden you start seeing all these articles pop about Elon Musk being a huge gamer, his love for how much he's liking Diablo 4. Apparently he broke a record of some kind. And now all of a sudden we're reporting today that he's talking about doing XAI gaming and actually creating a gaming studio. So it's like an official announcement. Well, and now he's asking how much is HASBRO, and he's given a little bit of a number here, or at least a soft, quick answer number here. And I'm wondering, I was like, fast forward 4 weeks, is Elon Musk going to legit buy HASBRO? I'm like, is this going to actually happen? Because that's the kind of way he does things. It's like he pokes out an idea, feels it out, and then does it. Like Doge is a thing. Doge was just an idea. It's just a meme. Now it's real. It's going to exist. And then
I think we have one person, ironically, to thank for Elon doing what he's doing.
Yep,
And
I agree.
that is his son that turned into a daughter.
A raging leftist daughter. Yeah. I mean,
Because once that happened, he's like, I'm
Fuck
gonna
it.
kill the woke mind virus.
and honestly, Hasbro is arguably one of the best places to start. I would make so here's the case I would make here. So Hasbro, so Matt, you were saying their umbrella is really huge. Yeah, we definitely talked about that. Hasbro is going to be Transformers. It's Dungeons and Dragons under Wizards of the Coast. It's Magic the Gathering, one of the oldest trading card game and one of the biggest and most popular trading card games ever to have existed. And it's still going strong. Like, first off, there are people who
Didn't they make Aragon black?
They did, yeah. So that's another thing. It's like Elon could fix that. He could create new card art where Aragon's white again. How freaking funny would that be if he race swapped the race swap on the Magic the Gathering cards? Be like, the card's the same. We just came out with new artwork to more accurately represent Tolkien's vision. And how funny would that be? The rage would be immense.
Dude, I hate this timeline so much.
Oh my god. Well, here's the thing about Magic the Gathering. First and foremost, I mean, you have a lot of people who, when they take over a company, they change things that probably don't need to be changed. Magic the Gathering is the most successful trading card game that I think has ever been created. Depending on what metric you're using, it's just gonna be the best. I hate that game so much. I have no fun. Magic the Gathering is anti-fun to me. I can't stand it. I just hate it. But I don't want Elon to go in there and change any of the mechanics of anything he's playing with. If he does go in there, I'm like, can we create some decent Transformers projects? Can we create some... And Transformers 1, the most recent Transformer movie, came out, was a good film. It just underperformed. But
apparently the comic is pretty good now too.
Yeah, so...
People are praising the comic.
Yeah, not everything in Hasbro needs to be fixed. But, Wizards of the Coast is really the problem, because Magic the Gathering falls under Wizards of the Coast, and so does Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, you don't need... first off, they really should fix the mechanics in the newer versions of Dungeons and Dragons. I don't know that that's Elon's purview. I'm not saying he shouldn't. I'm just saying, like, with everything else going on, don't put any of your processing power towards it. Like, but the things that need to be fixed are all of the woke mind virus stuff that's hidden within Hasbro, and that stuff needs to be rooted out and fixed.
Yeah.
And I think
Well, the same with a lot of companies.
well, and you know, the left has really dominated and taken over. Like Magic the Gathering is Magic the Gathering is one of like a safe haven for leftists. Like, I mean, there's
Well, I mean, the right is a lot at fault here too, because they didn't really care about entertainment for the longest fucking time, and it's like they belittled gamers or
yep.
like people into like anime
Matt
or
Walsh still does
superheroes,
that.
comics, whatnot.
Yeah,
They did that for years, and now they're finally getting their heads out of their asses and just being like, oh, apparently culture fucking matters.
yeah.
Yeah.
It took them way too long. You're right. But
Took them 20 years too long.
well, and so if it first off, I don't really want to shake the Magic the Gathering tree. I want to get in there. I want the Tolkien related stuff to be fixed. The Dungeons and Dragons stuff is like Dungeons and Dragon is a home game, right? Like you play it at home. Like if you want to surround yourself with a bunch of leftists and you want to be that one cringy weird guy who like talks about like sex and talks in a weird waifu voice or and like just role plays like that, like okay, it's never going to be my game, but whatever, knock yourself out.
Ooh.
No, it is that like there's horror stories that are that bad, and I mean I've played with some people who have been affected by that stuff. It's never been that bad, but I've seen it firsthand for the games I run. But Dungeons and Dragons is one of the games where it's like, look, just take the messaging out, polish the mechanics up a little bit, but there's not a lot to fix with Hasbro. I wouldn't make the case. It's like this one guy over there who's being a dick and a douchebag and like shitting on Gary Gygax. Yeah, he shouldn't be responsible for anything touching Dungeons and Dragons as an IP. But at the same time, it's like the actual like end customer experience is pretty balanced in the result. As far as like D&D is still very male dominated, but there's a much wider bracket of like more female involvement. It's definitely got a lot more popularity. And that
D&D also has like the most, like you can do whatever the fuck you want with that game. It has some of the most what's the word for it? Like
homebrew,
yeah,
like soft rules.
you can do whatever. I mean,
Yep.
the DM is the one that makes the scenario that you're in, so you can take from basically whatever.
Well, and that's actually
And
another.
They have the
make a
different
story for you
editions.
guys to travel through.
Go ahead, Matt. You were saying, what did you say, Matt? I didn't catch it.
They just have the different editions. So like
Yeah.
it's kind of like what happened with Battlefield. Battlefield 2042 came out. All the people that were playing 4 were like, "Oh, let's try this." Sucks. They went back to 4.
Yeah.
With 5e, people, if a 6th edition or whatever comes out, they might try it, but then if they don't like it,
They'll
their
go back.
wallets are gonna talk.
Yeah.
And the people up in Hasbro would be like, "Oh, this didn't perform very well."
Well,
They'll point fingers, but it's ultimately their fault.
and that's exactly what
everyone
happened with
votes their
4.
wallet.
Well, that's exactly what happened with 4th edition. So 3.5 was commonly liked. And I don't want to speak too matter of factly on that because I didn't play 3.5. I'm just hearing testimony. But my understanding was that 3.5 was actually very, very popular and very liked, and 4th edition really sent a lot of people back to 3.5, just like you were saying. The issue with Hasbro, I guess, on that front was Hasbro made an attempt to create a new terms of service that basically made it that any published work, any work that you create as a result of homebrew is the property of Hasbro. So you cannot create homebrew that doesn't become Hasbro's property. So
Do they do 40K too?
no, I don't believe they're connected.
Who does 40K?
That's Games Workshop, which is still an independent.
Oh yeah.
But so yeah, Hasbro attempted to not only like limit what people can play with, but also made an attempt to make it legally binding that people who are using D&D to make their own homebrewed games, anything that came out of those homebrewed games financially to benefit anybody was the property of Hasbro. So that was so evil. The one thing that would be beautiful if Elon came to Hasbro to do would be if he made Dungeons and Dragons like completely open source, like homebrew this, homebrew that, create this, get backing behind these independent creators, publish the work of independent creators. There's a whole website called the DMs Guild that has all of these amazing independent projects. There's hundreds and hundreds of independent projects that are like nearly full published books, or just a class rework, or just or just an addition of spells that someone homebrewed and created. A lot of them are free with the hope that people will donate to them, or some of them are published and actually cost money. But if Elon went on there, it's like once a week, we're gonna like work with an independent creator to actually publish their book and make it a part of the world. That'd be so freaking cool. Like if Elon Musk just came in there just to be friendlier to the existing D&D fandom, that'd be good. Because right now,
So-
Wizards of the Coast is very antagonistic towards them.
Question with like whatever homebrew, they owe to Hasbro. Does that mean that Critical Role, and like obviously Vox Machina is based off of Critical Role, did they owe money to
So the actual
Hasbro?
update to the terms of service never went through. The backlash was so deafening. Like it
Okay.
like it was actually going to result in a lot of legal issues for Hasbro, and I don't know that it would have been enforceable, because I'm trying to think of a good example of this, but let's say you are
I have an example.
Oh, yeah, fire away then. Yeah, go ahead.
So if you compare it to like what we're talking about with Unity and Unreal Engine, there's an option when you go in there to like, are you just using this for fun, or are you using it as a business? And if you select I'm using it as a business, any proceeds that you make after you've developed your game, they get like 5% or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be comparable to Hasbro and homebrew and whatnot.
And so
I don't know how they would track it.
So I want to get the actual thing correct here. So it's the open game license. It was referred to as the OGL 2.0. That was the open games license was the controversy, and that's from January 2023. So it's a bit older news, and I would have to reread up on it to get current. But that was my understanding of what that was all covering and what happens with all of that. So hopefully I was on point with that, because I'm pretty sure everything shook out the way I said. I just want to try to be clear going forward. But all right. Yeah, so Wizards of the Coast, if Elon Musk buys Hasbro, I think there's a lot of good he could do. I hope that it doesn't take away from any of the other good things he's doing right now. So, I mean,
I like how Elon's become basically like cultural Jesus, where it's like, hey, just buy all these companies, lay off everyone you have to, and then you just don't have to do anything. Just keep trying to send people to Mars. We're good.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder, like, with everything Elon has on his plate, I don't know who he has himself surrounded with, right? Like, I don't know who his like lieutenants are. I don't know who the people he trusts are, right? I don't know who's
AI.
running X in his absence, or who's running.
Did you say AI?
It's all AI.
It's Terminators are on it, bro.
Do you think it's AI? Like, do you think? Or,
I would be surprised if he didn't have some sort of AI scheduler, like
oh, okay. I like
something to keep him up.
like an AI assistant, like just managing his stuff to keep him like on time management and stuff. Yeah, because he can.
It's just voiced by Joe Rogan.
Yeah, that'd be fun. That'd be so cool. All right. Anything?
I was speaking of Elon. I've just been reading about his like thing with his son/daughter, and it's fucking insane.
Yeah, that whole story is quite depressing, because
It actually kind of is.
well, the worst. I mean,
It's like,
Elon's not the
well,
worst
he was
case.
never there. Blah blah blah. It's like, yeah, dude's trying to change the fucking world. I understand that, but also you need a father in the home. That's probably why you're a little bit more feminine. And also, you've never wanted for anything in your entire fucking life because he's the richest man on earth.
Yep. Well, the other. I
So
mean,
it's just-
there's worse stories than Elon's in that regard, because the worst one that I could think of is the guy in Texas whose son wanted to be a woman, and his wife divorced him and the courts gave
that
her.
was Canada, wasn't it?
No, it was I mean, there's definitely I know the Canadian story you're talking about, but this was Texas, California stuff, because the guy lost full custody, but he was also threatened with jail with if he didn't affirm pronouns and stuff. The
Right.
Canada one is like a mirrored story. They're pretty much the same story from two different locations. So, I mean,
He actually got jail time for it.
yeah, the Canada guy got jail time for it. The guy in Texas, I don't know how he could. I mean, he could probably get arrested. I mean, for child endangerment, but that would be a very, very hard case to make it for the courts. Like, he's got a dick. I just didn't want him to chop it off, Your Honor. Your Honor.
Yeah, I'm reading this from, what is it, NBC, so it's kind of, you know, it leans one way.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, he's dead naming her, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a shit. Yeah, we'll have to dig more into that.